Welcome to SVG-TV News for Monday, May 13, 2024. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. 5 water systems have now dried up, causing a critical shortage of potable water in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This has led to more communities being enlisted for water disruptions, with interruptions occurring at least twice daily for several hours. The water systems in the red code are Dalloway, Majorca, John Hill, Montreal, and Mamoon. The worsening drought conditions have severely affected these water systems. When water systems are red-coded, it indicates that they are at risk and strict water conservation measures have been implemented. The Central Water and Sewage Authority, the CWSA, advises that activities such as car washing, power washing, and all other non-essential uses of water should cease immediately. Furthermore, the company is urging households to activate water storage measures. The CWSA will be holding a news conference tomorrow, Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, to update the public on the worsening impact of the dry spells on the water systems. And as water supply systems continue to experience drying conditions, water shortages have become problematic not only for residents in the affected communities, but also for students. Today, the Thomas Saunders Secondary School, which is located on the tarmac of the decommissioned E.T. Joshua Airport at Arnorsville, was reportedly forced to close earlier than usual. President of the SVG Teachers Union, Oswell Robinson, expressed his disappointment with the current state of affairs regarding water at the school.
I'd just like to express my concern and disappointment that the Thomas Saunders School has to be closed again today at 2 o'clock. This time has to do with no water at the school. This is not the first time I have made the suggestion to the Ministry of Education and the government to install water storage tanks at schools. We had so many tanks coming into the country during the volcanic eruption. And even when we had COVID, I made that recommendation that you should have enough water being stored in tanks, erect these tanks, so that the schools could have a reasonable supply of water, especially now that we are being faced with shortage of water in the country, as indicated by the Central Water Authority.
Robinson emphasized that the government must ensure that other schools do not face closures due to water shortages. He highlighted that the nation's children are now being affected and this issue must be urgently addressed.
That school has a problem, especially during the midday break. The water pressure is very low, and it is even more serious that there is a challenge with water from the main water supplies. So I'm calling on the authorities to do the right thing. Erect tanks at all the schools so that the nation's children could be in school a full school day. For a school to be closed because you don't have water is a really embarrassing situation, because this is something that you must have a backup system. Later on you could put in a pump where you could pump the water, but right now you could use the gravity feed to ensure that you have adequate water in schools, because this is a serious concern. The schools can operate without water. You need water to flush toilets, water for drinking purposes, and other things.
Meanwhile, in Parliament last Thursday, Parliamentary Representative for the Southern Grenadines, Terence Oliver, inquired about the measures in place to address the recurring water shortage in the Grenadines. Minister responsible for Grenadines Affairs, Bernava Brown, acknowledged that they are aware of the current threat to water systems in the Grenadines and they are seeking to bring some relief to residents.
This water supply system is under threat as loose and untied animals have recently accessed the water supply and have contaminated it. Hence, the usage and distribution from this source were halted. Consequently, sampling, testing, and analysis have been carried out on the breach, and the breach is currently being addressed to ensure that water quality is aligned with national health standards. Madam Speaker, over the years, the supplies and systems have significantly improved in the Grenadines. From the use of household drums and communal cisterns to individual cistern and pipe desalination distribution in some areas of Beckway, and the availability of potable water at Port Kingston Grenadines Wharf. The potable water can easily be transferred from the port to the Grenadines. This water is provided at a reasonable cost. It must be noted that the systems and water quality have improved with more frequent monitoring and testing and analysis that have been done by the CWSA and local authorities. Madam Speaker, without a doubt, the ongoing drought conditions and dry conditions that are currently being experienced throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines have acutely affected the Grenadines, who possess little to no natural freshwater sources. Because of the methods and source of water are susceptible to contaminations, as I previously mentioned.
In other local news now, we hear that in 2023, a combination of reduced total exports of goods and an increase in total imports compared to 2022 resulted in a slight rise in the country's trade deficit from $1 billion EC dollars to $1.1 billion. Minister of Finance, Economic Planning and Information Technology, Camilla Gonzales, highlighted this in Parliament last Thursday in response to a query from opposition MP Sinclair Leacock regarding the escalating trade deficit, particularly in goods, as reported. Minister Gonzales outlined that the value of total exports decreased by 11% to $109.5 million from $123 million in the previous year, 2022, while the total value of imports increased by 4% to $1.2 billion. He clarified that a decrease in the value of total goods exported does not necessarily signify a trend over the 5-year period, as the data displays fluctuates.
Notably, there was a sharp increase in imports in 2021 to $1 billion from $866 million, and a steep decline in exports to $95 million, which resulted in the widening of the trade deficit. The increase in imports was mainly attributable to high importation of humanitarian goods and supplies as a result of the dual shock of the 2021 COVID pandemic and the eruptions of the La Soufre volcano. The trade deficit in goods was 27% higher in 2021 relative to the previous year. Madam Speaker, historically, St. Vincent and the Grenadines' current account deficit widened following the loss of preferential market access for bananas to the EU market. As a result, greater emphasis has been placed on diversifying the economy around services and away from an overt dependency on a monocrop. The narrow export base and unfavorable trade balance have been offset by a favorable services trade balance, led by travel and tourism. Travel and tourism accounts for 87% of service exports as a sector. And as a sector, it has interlinkages with most sectors of the economy. Further, the increased demand for St. Vincent and the Grenadines tourism product has meant that there's greater consumption of local produce while simultaneously creating opportunities for increased production and export.
Regarding services, Minister Gonzales noted the ongoing transition towards creating a modern, competitive, post-colonial and diverse economy has been underway.
One looks at the Central Bank statistics, Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, for extended balance of payment trade in services. I'm coming back to goods. You'll see that if we go back 10 years, the surplus in services by that measure, extended balance of payment of trade in services, in 2014 it was a positive $208 million. So it was $349 million imported services and 557 exported. And that service surplus, if you will, increased, I won't go year by year, Madam Speaker, because I'm just discussing the trend, increased from a surplus of $208 million in 2014 to a surplus of $362 million in 2024, which means that it was up by 67% over the last decade. That's on the services side. And referencing tourism, which as we said is a main component of the services, if you again look at the central bank statistics for total visitor expenditure over the same period of time, you'll see that in 2013, 2014, the numbers are almost identical. Total visitor expenditure was $249 million. And by the time you got to 2019, which was the pre-pandemic year, that had increased to $603 million. So over that period of time, 2013 to 2019, you were up 142% in total visitor expenditure by tourists, well, visitor.
Quoting data from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Minister Gonzales mentioned the deficit across the board in the trade balance within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union in regards to goods.
The union deficit is just under $10 billion in 2023. And if you go in dollar terms, country by country, the smallest trade deficit in goods belongs to Dominica, and the largest belongs to St. Lucia. Dominica is about $775 million. St. Lucia is about $2.2 billion. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines is number 3 on that list in terms of having the third smallest trade deficit in goods.
This is about $1 billion?
1.1 billion. 1.1 billion. I mentioned that earlier, but it's 1.1 billion. If you want, I give you, it's Dominica 775, St. Kitts 829, St. Vincent 1.1 billion, Grenada 2 billion, 1.97, Antigua and Barbuda 2.2 billion, St. Lucia 2.2 billion, slightly higher than Antigua. And if you look at exports, you will see that in 2030, I'm just giving a 10-year gap. It bounces up and down in between. But in 2013, we exported $132 million worth of goods, and in 2023, we exported $110 million worth of goods. A lot of that is related to the fact that agriculture has yet to rebound to its pre-volcano levels. St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to lead and has consistently led the Eastern Caribbean in the export of food and live animals.
Discussing specific measures to address the trade deficit in goods, Minister Gonzales mentioned initiatives to identify and capitalize on niche markets where the country holds a comparative advantage, such as in the sectors of arrowroot starch and fisheries. He highlighted the construction of a new arrowroot factory at Orange Hill, expected to improve the quality and quantity of arrowroot starch and its byproducts. Additionally, he said significant investments are being made in the fishing industry, with funds secured to upgrade fishing centers in Calico, Owia and Chateaubelair. Minister Gonzales also mentioned efforts by the minister responsible for fisheries to attract producers and exporters into the SVG market. Regarding leading export commodities for SVG, Minister Gonzales cited data showing that over the last 5 years, flour, poultry feed and frozen conch have been the top commodities. In more local news now, we hear that efforts to address the challenges brought about by climate change in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are underway through proactive measures. On Thursday, May 8th, GEMS, a sustainable development organization, initiated a participatory climate risk mapping project for Mesopotamia and surrounding communities. This collective endeavor aims to enhance adaptation strategies and resilience in light of the escalating impacts of climate change. Larissa Pugsley-Kidd tells us more in this report.
Storms, landslides, flooding are some of the climate risks for Mesopotamia and surrounding communities identified at a recent participatory mapping workshop held at the Emmanuel School. The residents who participated in the workshop assessed the impacts of climate change and other environmental hazards that may affect vulnerable areas in their communities. Climate change scientist and director of GEMS, Dr. Andrew Simmons, is leading the project.
We would get this to the people who are doing the GIS maps. And what they would do, they would, for each of the colors, each of the stressor, the climate stressor, each of the problems that we identify, we would, in a sense, get them to develop a different map on it. Only one, there's a serious problem here. Is deforestation a problem?
Dr. Simmons added that developing strategies for the communities to enhance resilience is necessary.
If you know how to, where these things are called, at least there's a strong possibility that you can either avoid them or what we call, you can adapt. This is what we call adaptation. You can take measures to deal with the situation.
The Red Cross team from Mesopotamia also participated in the mapping exercise.
Yeah, we get flooding from Richland Park right down to Gonzales, right down to Morocco. It was enlightening for us as a Red Cross members because during the drought and hurricane, Red Cross members do a lot. We take part, we work at the shelters.
The GEMS Participatory Climate Risk Mapping Project is supported by Canary under the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, which forms part of a broader initiative to build resilience across St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Similar workshops are planned for Chateaubelair, Cumberland Spring Village area, Vermont Valley, Conneray and Georgetown, Orange Hill. For SVG-TV News, Larissa Pugsley-Kidd.
This week, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is joining the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, in observing Mosquito Awareness Week under the theme Small Bite, Big Threat and the slogan Stop Disease Transmission, Start Source Reduction. Mosquito Awareness Week is an effort of the countries and territories of the Americas promoted by PAHO to raise awareness and work with communities on the links between mosquitoes and the diseases they transmit, such as dengue, chikungunya, Zika, malaria, and yellow fever. Rena Lynch, a field assistant in the Vector Control Unit of the Public Health Department within the Ministry of Health, emphasized the significance of the theme and slogan this year in highlighting the urgent need for proactive measures against mosquito-borne diseases, particularly by eliminating mosquito breeding sites.
And when you destroy mosquito breeding sites, they would help you prevent them from multiplying, basically, and potentially limit the spread of any diseases associated with them. So the entire week is about sensitizing persons about what they can do, empowering them with a little bit of knowledge and understanding of what it is what role they can play in source reduction, arboviral transmissions, what role they play in preventing, limiting, and potentially eliminating any issues associated with vectors and arboviral transmission. As you say, it's a daily process, but a week especially dedicated to that, where persons know that there is an organization where they can reach out for assistance. There is knowledge, there is always that base of knowledge that they can go to and basically have that information available at hand. And it's not just about the vector control unit, it's also about the schools, non-governmental organizations, and other places that partner with us to get that understanding out there to persons within the community. So I think this year would be its 10th year in inception, if I remember correctly. So it's a process. It's always an ongoing process.
Lynch further explained that he and other field officers from the Vector Control Unit have been actively collecting data on mosquito populations in various communities, while also educating the public on their role in reducing mosquito populations and the unit's efforts in source reduction.
Source reduction is the process where all the breeding sites, whatever container type we basically turn it over, tip it over, get rid of the breeding site. If the person has any use for the water, we sensitize them about what best means or best methods they should use or practices they should have to protect that water from becoming a possible mosquito breeding site. So, like I said, it's a daily process. When the unit isn't in a particular village, the information and the education that we leave in the village should be enough for us to have a presence there, because, as you know, knowledge is empowering. So, yeah, basically, that's it. Basically, that's as far as the breeding sites go. But when the mosquito emerges and it takes full wing and it starts flying around, persons are familiar with the fogging operations that the unit carries out on a basis when there is a large breeding source in mass. So the unit, along with source reduction, education, chemical control, biological control, source reduction, there's a lot that goes into the integrated vector management model that we use.
Regarding fogging, Lynch elaborated on the process, including how communities requiring fogging are identified and prioritized.
Okay, there are some indices associated with our entomological surveillance. One of them is a house index and a Breto index. The house index is the calculation of the amount of houses that we found breeding Aedes aegypti mosquitoes in a particular community. And the Breto index now is the relation of the amount of positive containers per houses that we inspected. So once we have an index that passes a particular threshold, then that is an indicator of disease transmission, because you can't become sick with a disease unless the disease is present in the populace. And only the adult female Aedes aegypti mosquito spreads diseases. She is the one responsible for giving dengue, chikungunya, and Zika. So to make that decision, the index has to be over a particular threshold, and once it's beyond a particular threshold, we decide, okay, if the percentage is higher than, say, 20-25%, then we would go into that particular community and do fogging based on that.
A cultural group from St. Vincent and the Grenadines is currently in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to take part in the country's World Festival Viva Venezuela. This initiative is a key component of a broader cultural exchange facilitated by the Embassy of Venezuela and the Hugo Chavez Ferrez Institute for Cultural and Cooperation. Head of the Venezuelan diplomatic mission here in SVG, His Excellency Francisco Perez Santana, told SVG-TV News that he is happy that SVG is participating in the festival.
It's gonna be an international music festival and dance festival in Venezuela, where the government of Venezuela invite San Vincent, the people of San Vincent, to participate. The government will be represented by La Gracia dance group, and in that day, May 10, we celebrate the Afro-Descendants Day, and of course that is a great opportunity because in that day also we will have the representation of the African culture through not just La Gracia and the other countries and Venezuela, but also 10,000 drummers playing at the same time. No?
Meanwhile, last Thursday, students studying Spanish and members of the SVG Solidarity Movement gathered at the Venezuelan Embassy to commemorate Afro-Venezuelan Day, underscoring the bonds of solidarity between the two nations.
That means that in this month, you know that we are receiving the rain and we can get some fruit from our plants, and this is the way that our our ancestors, African ancestors, Afro-descendant ancestors, represent the way how they say that even we were colonized by Spaniards in Venezuela, we decorate the cross because it's the way that we say thank you to the land, to the nature, to God, for the fruits, for the food, for the ground provisions. And also the way that our Afro-descendants say, we are not colonized. We have another way, cultural ways to say that we want to be free.
A representative from the Solidarity Movement welcomed the event, emphasizing its educational and empowering value.
That means that in this month, you know that we are receiving the rain and we can get some fruit from our plants. And this is the way that our our ancestors, African ancestors, Afro-descendant ancestors, represent the way how they say that even we were colonized by Spaniards in Venezuela, we decorate the cross because it's the way that we say thank you to the life, to the nature, to God, for the fruits, for the food, for the ground provisions. And also the way that our Afro-descendants say, we are not colonized. We have another way, cultural ways to say that we want to be free.